Charlie in Denver.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm calling about, the last guy was pretty relevant to what I'm wanting to ask. My philosophy teacher and my book for philosophy has defined atheism as the claim that God does not exist, which, based on, a lot of, I know it's the difference between being a Gnostic atheist and an agnostic atheist, and I think most of us would be an agnostic atheist, where we don't know for sure that God doesn't exist, but we have reason to believe that the likelihood of God is very low.
Right.
And it seems like my philosophy teacher would define all of us as agnostics rather than atheists, and I just was wondering how I might deal with that, or
well, I think the best thing to do, you might want to turn your volume down if you're listening on a computer and just listen to the call. I think, what you could do is just enlighten your philosophy teacher about, there are other included definitions for the word atheism that don't require you to state with certainty that no gods exist. And point out the fact that there are I guess different flavors of that. You can be agnostic atheist, you can be Gnostic atheist, and which I am depends on what God you're claiming exists. So, is your philosophy teacher agnostic when it comes to Zeus?
Well, see, I used that, and she got concerned about knowledge versus belief. Like, she didn't understand that I was trying to distinguish between those things.
Well, let me ask you this. When you get right down to the root of it, what's the real problem here? You've told your philosophy professor, I don't think there's a God, but I'm not 100% certain, right?
Well, yeah. Basically.
Okay, so and she says, by my definition, you're not an atheist.
Well, and
right?
By my philosophy book's definition as well.
Okay, so why don't you just say, okay, then I'm not an atheist, so what?
Because I'm not sitting on a fence, and it's not like I don't know what I believe.
Yeah, well, make that clear. Explain exactly what you think, and then who cares if she decides to agree with what label you put on yourself? Why? As a philosophy professor, she ought to be willing to discuss the actual concepts in question, not what words we should put on the concepts, because after all, words are just made up by people anyway.
Well, it's just, I'm concerned that this definition mischaracterizes atheism in a way that...
Well, make no mistake, it does mischaracterize it, and your philosophy professor seems to be the one who's confused about what words mean. But in general, I find that it's a real waste of time to try to convince people that words mean one thing and not another. So what if you just say, okay, I totally don't believe in God, but fine, I'm not going to use the word atheist anymore. Now what? Convince me that there is a God. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. It's just like... I would also be saying that I wasn't convinced by any of the arguments that atheists has for no evidence of God's existence.
Well, why don't you just address the actual arguments in class? Like Russell said,
we're getting to that.
Yeah, and that's really the most important thing anyway. The label, you could change the label. You can say that, okay, this week I'm going to take, someone who believes that there's not enough evidence to accept that a God exists, we're going to call them blue atheists this week. And who cares, as long as you agree on what the term means, even if you know that that's actually too restrictive a definition of atheism, and I agree that it is, but if you agree that that's how you're going to use the term in that class, and that's what that's going to mean, then you can move forward and come to a common understanding based on the concepts you're discussing.
Well, then I'm going to have to write a lot more.
Okay.
Well, it's a philosophy class.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm going to have to, define what agnostic is and what my version of agnostic is instead of just,
Well,
I think that might be worthwhile.
It's good practice. I mean, in real life, you don't restrict yourself to writing 5-page papers if you've got 10 pages worth of stuff to say.
Well, it's just philosophers have historically been long-winded. And
yeah, well,
I just kind of not
that'll
want to
teach you to
that
take
tradition.
a philosophy class.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really interested in philosophy.
Well, you should be.
So, yeah, I think just, agree on what the definition's going to be. Don't worry about it. For what it's worth, we agree with you. That's just too restrictive a definition of atheism, but it's probably not a battle that's worth fighting in your class.
Part of the art of writing college papers is understanding how your audience thinks and trying to get through to the particular person who will be reading your paper the best way. And now that you know how your philosophy professor thinks, it's totally okay to exploit that knowledge and avoid subjects that you think she would disagree with, and focus on subjects that you think would work and pander to her. Because if ultimately if your goal is to get a good grade in the class, and you know what it takes to write a good paper, then write the good paper and start a blog if you want to, communicate to a wider audience what your real thoughts are.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that.
Okay.
All right, thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, bye.
See ya.
Bye.